Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a non-spoiler book review for the Rithmatist by Brandon Sanderson. For those that don't know, there are a bunch of books by Brandon Sanderson that are a part of a shared universe called the Cosmere. This is not one of them. So if you're looking for a story that you feel like you can read without getting so deep into, and you're going to look for these little hints that connect all the books together and everything, if you just want to give Sanderson a try, I think this is a great one, especially because it's geared toward a slightly younger audience. It's very accessible, and if there's one thing about Sanderson's books that I personally appreciate, but I know are not to everyone's tastes, is that most of his books have slow beginnings, and this story didn't. I felt like right away I was engaged. I was a little confused and disoriented for sure with the magic, because there is a very complex, really interesting, really unique magic system in this story, but I cared about the characters, I think, faster than I've ever cared about any Sanderson characters. The setup for the story is that we follow a young man named Joel. He's 16 years old and he is currently attending this very prestigious school that is broken up into two different sections. One section is for non-Rithmatists, and then one section is for the Rithmatists. They have some crossover a little bit, but not much. And the Rithmatists are the people that are able to use magic in their world. Something that I found really fun is this is kind of sort of our own world, but an alternate history, and things have played out differently because of the magic that came into the world at some point, and also because of the geography. I actually found it really interesting that basically the United States is broken up into a bunch of different islands. So just that alone I found to be really fun and kind of fascinating. Anytime you get little bits and pieces of our world, but not quite, I thought that was so cool. And it's something that I really appreciated, because that means you still get the typical Sanderson world building, but it was a perfect amount for a younger audience because of the fact that it's accessible. It's our own world, but a little bit tweaked. So it's something that's familiar, but a little different. And I felt those differences were really fascinating to learn about. That, of course, though, is not the focal point of the story. We follow Joel, he is a character that I instantly loved because he was relatable and sometimes a little annoying, which I really liked because he acts like a teenager, but he's a good-hearted, good-natured kid. He just has dreams of being a Rithmatist, the people that can use magic in their world, and he isn't one. He's obsessed with it, though. It's what he loves, and he is so consumed by it. But he kind of comes from a poorer background, and the people who are Rithmatists, they don't really pay much attention to him. Non-Rithmatists, usually because they're going to this nice school, are rich kids, and he's not rich, so he's a little bit of a loner. And despite nobody outright bullying him, you just kind of feel for him, and you feel so bad, but he's kind of quirky because he has this obsession. He's so passionate about something that he can't quite be involved in. I do think that his story arc is one in which a lot of people will find themselves relating to, because many times in our lives we find ourselves passionate about something that it feels like nobody else really is passionate about, or we feel like other people don't really understand our passion. That's something so many people can relate to, and I thought Sanderson brought that to life so well in Joel. I also think that he did a great job of showing different personalities in our side characters. So we have a professor character who is basically this sweet old mentor character who is very unassuming. He's very kind and calm and scholarly, and also a tad on the quirky side. Basically all the characters are a little bit on the quirky side. And his relationship with Joel, I loved seeing. It wasn't necessarily your typical mentor where they're just looked at with such reverence and things like that, and they're not constantly scolding them with lots of wisdom. They're their own person. They're interacting with them. They're just somebody who is in a position above Joel and at times provides guidance, but at times they work together. And I thought that was really fun to see so often in books where we have young protagonists. The protagonists are basically the main heroes. They do everything on their own, and there's no including adults. And this one was nice because the adults and the younger characters worked together. Speaking of adults, we also get Joel's mother as a character. She's a minor character, but the relationship between him and his mom touched on some really amazing themes that I really appreciated. When you have young protagonists, I always find that I'm not necessarily looking to relate to them as I am right now, but rather how maybe I felt when I was younger. It evokes memories, and it definitely did, but it also touched on some things that I feel like I can relate to now. His mother is somebody that works incredibly hard for her son's future. He shouldn't technically be allowed to go to the school based off of their income, but I won't explain how he's able to because I don't want to spoil that for you guys. But he sees how hard his mother works, and he's just constantly thinking about how he wishes his mom didn't have to work so hard, and his mom is always telling him, I work this hard so that you can have a better future. And I just think about my own parents, who are basically the hardest working people I've ever met, and it just, I don't know, it was so nice to see. I understand that not everybody has that relationship with their own parents, but the concept of having a good relationship between a parent figure and our main protagonist in a story, I just don't see it very often, and it just touched a little place in my heart. I really, really loved seeing it. So the story itself, I already kind of gave you the general setup, but the plot really gets going when Joel, through a series of some interesting events, ends up becoming involved in the investigation of some missing students. All of these missing students happen to be Rithmatist students, and it would seem like the person who is responsible for these students going missing is a Rithmatist themselves. And that brings us to the magic system. I have to say, for those that are Sanderson fans and really love Sanderson's magic, I would put this one up there with Mistborn's magic system. It's not the same at all, but as far as the complexity and the rules and limitations, with a hint of that it feels like science, but also it's still magic, that kind of a vibe, that is this magic system. I just don't know how the man is always able to come up with so many unique magic systems. It is so cool. The way it works is that the Rithmatists can draw these circles and lines. It sounds really simple, but it ends up becoming really complex. These particular drawings that they do, some of them are able to deflect, and some of them are able to protect and defend, essentially, and then they can create these little things called chalklings. All these drawings are made with chalk, and these chalklings are like these little creatures that can come to life, and most of the time the magic is used at this school for kind of like competitions, things like that. Nothing really, really important while they're at the school, but they kind of compete against each other. Nothing is meant to ever hurt anybody. However, there are things called wild chalklings. There's this tower that the students eventually, when they become of age, serve at this tower, defending against these wild chalklings and trying to ensure that these creatures don't kind of flood the world. So they're getting some what feels like trivial training while they're at the school, but it will eventually get around to being very practical combat training. All throughout the book, you get these little diagrams that show you the different kinds of circles and lines and how they work and how they function depending on how you do the lines, where you put the circles, all these kinds of things. And then the chalklings can take all sorts of different forms. That's the part of the magic that feels less scientific and a little more magical. And there are cute, charming, adorable little drawings all throughout the story of these different chalklings that people make. The one girl, Melody, loves to make unicorns, and so she's always drawing unicorns, much to Joel's annoyance. But I just loved the way they included all of these little details. It just made the book and the world feel so much more complete in such a simple way. It was a small little visual aid, but I ate it up. I'm very sorry that this entire review is basically me just fangirling, but I so enjoyed this story, and it's a book that I feel like not that many people have picked up, even if they're fans of Sanderson. I just feel like nobody talks about this story, and it, in my opinion, is very deserving of the praise. I try not to just give a book endless praise when I'm reviewing it, because I truly want you all to decide for yourselves if it sounds like something that's appealing to you, but it just, I think, just deserves more recognition. It was so sweet and fun and interesting and different. I don't know that I have had this much fun reading a story in so long, and this honestly deserves to be talked about alongside some of other works by Sanderson. Anyway, that is it for, if you can call it even a book review, we'll say my book review, but honestly, me just freaking the heck out about how much I loved this story. That's it. That's it for this, whatever you want to call this video. If I have one negative thing to say about this story, is that it's gonna be a while before we get the next one, and that's such a bummer because there so clearly is more to this story, so that kind of stinks. But otherwise, I really, really loved it. It might be my favorite new book that I've read this year. I loved it so much, and I'm like almost annoyed that it's Brandon Sanderson because I just now seem like I like everything the man writes, but I liked it so much, so I'm really sorry. A weird part of me wishes it wasn't Sanderson, but also he seems like a really nice guy and he works incredibly hard, so for that alone, I don't mind freaking out. I just feel bad for you guys constantly hearing me just love his stories so much. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you've read this and you have differing opinions, feel free to leave those in the comment section down below, kind of balance out my freaking out about the story. But if you loved it, share the love too. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.